So hopefully y'all can hear me. Good? Awesome. Yeah, he actually got my name pretty well on his first try. So props to him for that. It's usually a mouthful. So yeah, I'm Srivatsa Ray. If you can tell me what my name is, I'll give you $5. But I'm here to talk about distributed systems, which if you haven't noticed, it's a play on a word, on a pun. So it's distributed systems, but we're going to talk about the most critical part of the system, which is the people, and hence the teams. So who am I? I'm an immigrant. I live in New York. Too many roots, so I kind of call myself a world citizen at this point. Currently at Fastly, I'm an SRE on the platform engineering team. While not working, I like to travel, eat ice cream, and coffee. That's actually an accurate representation of me earlier today, eating ice cream outside. So that is me in a nutshell. A few more words about me. I've worked remotely for the past 8 years, which is almost all of my professional life. I worked in small teams, large teams, medium-sized teams, all sizes and all kinds of teams. I worked remotely while in the same city as a team, across the country, across the planet, and sometimes even at 35,000 feet, which is on planes. It's kind of amazing that we're able to be connected and online while on planes. My favorite thing is flying over the Pacific at 35,000 feet saying, haha, I'm online, which is, it's 2019, it's pretty amazing. Another thing that I will say is during the talk, I highly encourage you to interrupt me. If you have a question, if you don't agree with something I say, or if you just want to interrupt me for no reason, please raise your hand. There are mics up there. I will not be paying attention to this group, who are all my coworkers. I did not pay them to come here and cheer me on, but I don't know why they're here. Who is Fastly? We are an edge cloud platform. There's a bunch of words here which I'll summarize real quick. We allow developers to run applications close to the customers, which is on edges around the world. And we also serve content, static content, out of the same edges. So this is the loose agenda we're going to follow today. We're going to briefly discuss distributed systems. I'm going to tell you what the flaw is, and that is your chance to interrupt me and tell me it's not the flaw. We're going to talk about a possible solution, key areas to prep, and areas to focus on afterwards, and then rewards. By the way, I talked to the event organizers, and they planned a dinner after my talk, specially for my talk. So where's the room captain? I believe it's at 6 p.m., right? All right, we'll figure it out. So what is a distributed system? This is an oversimplified representation of what a distributed system might look like. Back in the day, you kind of had servers where you would jam everything on it. You had your web servers, your databases, everything on one box, and then all of a sudden, your web server is not able to serve pages because your SQL server is getting hammered. And then people were like, oh, let's split it out into separate components. So this is kind of typically what a web service would look like. You have the nice internet there. You have a load balancer. It goes to different web boxes, which talks to API boxes. There's a database. There's cache, and it's fun. And this is something I believe we're all used to. Take that to the next level, and then you distribute the system even more, which involves putting it on data centers around the world. You have some servers in North America. You have some in Europe, and this is what a geographically distributed system looks like. As an example, at Fastly, like I mentioned, we have edge locations all around the world. This is a pretty good, I believe it's May 2019, and it's ever evolving. And do not scale the map. It may have been squished in certain ways. But as you can see, we have a presence in North America, Europe, Asia, South Africa, South America, and even as far as Australia and New Zealand. So that is a typical example of what a distributed system looks like. While it is nice to be distributed, the other key feature that you get out of this is redundancy. So let's say your server in New York, for whatever reason, isn't able to serve traffic, which never happens. New York is perfect. Everything works in New York. But if the New York server were to go offline, a server from DC or Boston can easily pick up the traffic. So redundancy is one of the main features you get out of it. Now, this is where it gets controversial. The flaw. The most important component of a system is the humans behind it. And they are the ones who actually make the system what they are. But as humans, we have this flaw where we have a bias towards geographic congregations. And this is not just, wide geographies, but even narrow things like our social lives. We tend to go to the restaurant down the street. We tend to have friends who are in the same neighborhood. I mean, as a hard and fast rule, living in New York, if anyone lives more than 2 subway changes away from me, I'm sorry, that friendship's not going to work. That's how geographically concentrated we are. And the treatment we give code and servers isn't applied to the most important component, which is the humans. So, and the hard and fast truth is, talent really does not know any geopolitical borders or boundaries or geography. Every single person on this planet, thank you, sir. I promise I didn't pay him. Every single person on this planet is talented. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. It doesn't matter where you were born, where you went to school to, or if you didn't go to school. You have a talent and you can bring value to some team somewhere. Please do not forget that. So we talked about the flaw, which is, we don't treat the humans, which are the most important component of the system, with the same distributed nature as we give code and servers. And now we're going to talk about a possible solution. So what is the solution? Well, hire globally, hire everywhere. Let talent and commitment be the driver, not based on someone's chance of where they were born. So this is the solution, right? You hire everywhere. And of course, I know, I was writing my slides and I was like, wait, I'm done. I gave you this answer. So we're done, right? But we all know it's easier said than done. So we're going to talk about a few key areas to prep when your current team is geographically concentrated, on how you can make small changes in how you work every day to welcome a team that's more distributed. So prepping for that distributed team obviously does not mean putting your desk on the beach. Don't do that. Fun fact, by the way, I hate water, and this GIF stressed me out so much that I actually decided to put it in there. So the first thing I'd like to touch on is, again, I'm not going to suggest any commercially available solutions or open source solutions to the problems or the solutions. It's just going to be a higher level focus on little things you can do. Tools, they're really important. Big tools that afford collaboration. Tools that promote asynchronous participation, and find tools that allow continued participation. A great example is, we all use some sort of version control, and most of the commercially available version control systems are based on open source systems. I'm not going to name any, but it's pretty obvious what they are. GitHub. But if you actually look at it, yeah, sure, you can set up your own Git system on your server running somewhere and commit stuff to it and pull down repos and all of that. But the actual value that these services give you is the collaborative nature of how you open a pull request, how you can have comments on it, how you can type in something now and 8 hours later someone else can add something to it. So focus on picking tools that promote all of these ideals and afford collaboration on a larger scale. Communication. One thing we do a lot these days is we tend to gravitate a lot towards real-time communication mediums, and we have a plethora of chat applications and so on and so forth. But it's so easy to exclude people out of making key decisions when you make all of your decisions in that chat app. Because guess what? Anyone who's not online or not in that chat room doesn't have a chance to participate. Try to be more inclusive. One of the things I always try to do is, if it's a large decision, I choose to put it over email rather than have the entire conversation in your chat app. While email, you lose a little features in terms of collaboration, it also makes sure that everybody gets in and is included in what the decision is. We are online. This is actually one of my huge pet peeves. For a long time, I was at a company where a lot of people were geographically concentrated, and I wasn't in that particular office. And more often than not, people would come on to the chat room and say, from offline, we discussed this. And I would be like, huh? When did that happen? I mean, where did that happen? turns out it happened by the water cooler or the ice cream machine or the soda machine or whatever it is. Try to avoid saying things like, from offline, we decided X, Y, and Z. Of course, if you want to say ice cream is amazing, that's a universal truth and no one needs to debate that. But try not to say that, because as soon as you say from offline, you're automatically excluding every other geographically distributed person or someone who's not in the office and so on. So try to avoid that. Cultural differences, the gentleman before me kind of touched on this, and they are real. One of my biggest kind of examples is some cultures and upbringings don't really promote voicing opinions. I had a South Asian upbringing, and I love my parents, and they did an amazing job. But growing up, I was also told that children should be seen and not heard, and don't speak unless spoken to, which some of my other Asian counterparts here might relate to. So try to give everybody a platform. Not everybody is forthcoming or is ready to express their opinions, even though they have one. An example of this is, I'm going to have a little question session later, but I do recognize and realize that some people in this room may not want to step up to that mic. So if you have a question, that is a URL that you can go to, and you can leave questions there, and I'll get to them. But I do highly encourage you to stand up and speak if you do have a question. Lost myself there. Be kind. And this is something I want to emphasize, even if you don't want to or never plan to have a remote team. And especially in a remote team, your feedback loops are going to be delayed. Code reviews may take time. And I want to emphasize that even if you aren't on a remote team, this should be part of your ethos. Kindness really goes a long way. A couple of years ago, one of my previous bosses, Matt Reeferson at BuzzFeed, told me the difference between being nice and being kind. Being nice exudes sympathy, whereas being kind is empathetic towards the person. So kindness really does go a long way. All right, so now that we have prepped the team and kind of got them culturally ready for that remote, life, what are the areas to focus on after you're done with that? Again, I cannot emphasize this enough. Once you have a team that's distributed, some individuals might be in the same office, but be inclusive, communicate online, keep all discussions in venues that promote maximum participation, and always over-communicate intent. Whether it is something about code reviews or something like, oh, I'm going out to get lunch, drop a quick line and say, hey, going out to lunch. So you set the expectation that you're not going to be available for the next hour or half an hour, or however long you take to eat lunch. Be open to flex work hours. I don't mean work 19-hour days. What I mean here is, and the point I was trying to get across was, if you're working with someone who's in another time zone, make some effort to maybe have an early start and then take a break during the middle of the day, and then maybe come back to something in the evening, so to give you better overlap with the other person. A great example is the next few months I'm going to be working with someone in Tokyo, and New York and Tokyo are on opposite poles, and I was just thinking about it the other day. Maybe I can have an early start and then drop off midday and go do other stuff, and then come back later in the evening and do some sort of flexible thing like that. Your workday doesn't have to be 9 to 5, and you should encourage your team to also work when it works best for them, and not expect them to be online 9 to 5 every day. Use audio and video. Chat and email is tone deaf, and I learned this the hard way, because one of the languages Americans speak is sarcasm, and sarcasm does not carry over text. I've paid the price on Slack with coworkers. I've paid the price on text with people in my personal life, with my parents. Please, please, please understand this. I learned it the hard way, and I don't want you to go through it. One of my colleagues recently tweeted out, Lisa, who works at Fastly, she has a policy where anytime she has 3 unhappy lines of text, be it an email, chat, whatever, hop on a phone call. If you are unhappy with 3 messages sent by someone, stop right there. It's not going to get better. Hop on a phone call, hop on a video call. It makes it instantly better. And of course, I put this GIF in because we all know Mr. Bean. And imagine reading a book of Mr. Bean and how terrible that would be. Because I don't think he says anything. He's just making awkward movements. So yeah, hop on a video call. It really, really helps. Chit chat is important. Set aside some time to have social conversations. I personally try to have one-on-ones with most people that I work with. And those one-on-ones have no agenda. It's just open time, 30 minutes. And I always say, if you have to punt on it, it's fine. We don't have to meet every time it shows up in the calendar, but it gives us an opportunity just to catch up about, just life in general, what's happening, and that could lead into work-based conversations. But the idea is there's no agenda behind it, and it really helps build that human relationship, which will help you professionally as well. Group gatherings. This is obviously if it's feasible. Try to gather everybody every few months, at least once in 6 months, once a year, whatever works on your schedule. And don't focus on work. Don't make a group gathering saying, okay, we're going to finish this, this, and this ticket. No, it needs to be a little more open-ended, learn about each other. Making that investment into understanding someone will infinitely help you work with that person better. Respecting time preferences. So I do encourage, one of the things with working with people who are distributed is, local holidays are different, working cultures are different. There are some countries in Europe where you start work at 11 a.m. and you finish work at 10 p.m., whereas in the States we're more of 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. So one of the ways you can mitigate that is by putting on your calendar when you're available and when you're not. I actually go the extra mile, and I put my social commitments on my calendar as well. So if someone's trying to meet with me at 8 p.m. on a Monday, they know that, oh, he's out to dinner and he's going to be eating for 3 hours. And this is very critical because it helps out both sides schedule meetings and in general be respectful of the other person's time. So respecting time preferences is absolutely critical, especially when you're going cross-culture and cross-country and cross-time zones. Know your privilege. This is something that applies even if you're not working with remote teams. So one of the things, an example I always use is, I live in a country where expressing my opinions is a right that I have, and I've trained myself to realize that some other people may not have that same privilege in whatever country they are in or whatever region they're in. So knowing that while I have my universal right to express whatever I want, the other person may not. So don't engage in touchy topics. While you might try to be social with a person, and asking certain questions, do realize that maybe it's not something they can talk about. Hierarchies in organizations are another thing. While I have no issues standing up and questioning something that was, said multiple levels above me, other people may not have the same, freedom and comfort in doing so. And lastly, we're getting to the rewards. So some of these rewards are obvious. Once you have a distributed team, you have global coverage. Global coverage means no 3 a.m. wake-up calls for fixes. You always have someone who's awake and working. I saw this pay off really well at my, a couple years ago when I was at a previous employer, and we had a nasty incident where we pulled a 48-hour marathon. But the key was, since we were distributed, no one really lost sleep. Someone in Tokyo would start, they would find something, and then they would pass it off to someone, in Europe, and then they'd pass it off to someone in the US. So while it looked like our team was, pulled this marathon 48-hour session, no one lost too much sleep. I mean, of course, we didn't sleep a good 8 hours every day, but, it wasn't terrible either. So that is one of the apparent rewards of having a distributed team. But this is my favorite. Everything has a different meaning behind it. And one of my favorite wins of having a distributed team is it promotes understanding, it promotes cultural tolerance, it promotes knowing something about someone else on the other side of the world, and in the end it brings us all together and brings us online into this closer world where we understand more and we work together, and after all, we all win when we work together. And with that, I have questions. Yes.
Hello. Thanks for inspiring talk. My only question is, why are your slides marked confidential and you're showing us to all of us?
So I used a template that our company has, and I have no skills in making slides. I spent, I think, 30 minutes this morning trying to get the confidential thing out. Googled around. I should have gotten help, but I was hoping no one would notice, and of course someone did. I meant to take it off. If you know how to take it off, please come talk to me after this talk. Yes, sir.
All right. Again, excellent talk. I pretty much agree with 100% of everything you said.
There's always a but, isn't there?
No, there's no but. But, no. So you did mention, you stressed the importance of asynchronous communication methods, especially when there's a huge disparate time zone issue. But later on, you also mentioned the importance of real-time communication, when you have that, 3 things you wanted to say. And I'm wondering if you can elaborate more on sort of where you draw that distinction, or, how you deal with that time when you need the real-time one-on-one communication, but there is just that massive time zone difference where it's awkward for everybody.
Right. So I think the real-time communication kind of leads into the asynchronous communication, right? While asynchronous communication is going to be the bulk of how you communicate with someone on a polar opposite time zone, understanding what they're writing, the understanding comes to you better when you actually know something about the person or their communication style or how they talk. Like anybody who's talked to me knows that I say silly things, and I always use puns or make stupid jokes. Once you understand that part of me, when you read a comment that I make on your GitHub pull request, it makes you understand my comment way better than if you didn't know that about me. And of course, I'm picking on a silly kind of part of my communication style, but that kind of extends to everything else. Of course, real time is the best. There's no replacement for it, but it isn't necessarily something you can do on the daily all the time. Hope that answers your question.
Hey, just wondering if you have any any tips for knowledge transfer in a distributed team. Like we all have good intentions to write documentation about stuff we're working on, but intentions don't always translate into reality, and particularly where there's no overlap, it can sometimes be an issue, like getting that knowledge transfer.
Yeah, I feel like knowledge transfer is a challenge even in a non-distributed team, even in a team that's in the same office or in the same location. But it does become extra challenging when you move to a distributed team. I feel like my teammates here may have some insight into how good a job I do at knowledge transferring to them. But like I said in one of my slides, affording a medium of communication that allows continued participation really helps in this case. And picking a tool that you really want to use as against a tool that everybody else wants you to use is really important. I know, for example, on our team, there's one standard of documentation and one tool that most of the company uses, and we decided to use a different style because it worked better for us, and it was something that we were more comfortable with using. So kind of picking a tool that affords that continued participation in the style you like is really important and makes it a little better. It's not perfect. Don't think anyone has solved that problem. Sir.
Yeah, a tip, if you have a tip on, when you have a team that is mostly in one location, and it's extremely natural to turn to your colleague and talk, right? And how do you make sure that, how do you promote the inclusion of the other guys who are in another office remotely? Well, it's so easy to just talk to the guy next to you.
Yeah, that's something I struggled with at my current employer. Fortunately, all of us, if not most of us, are remote to each other. But my previous employer, we had kind of had this situation where I was remote, whereas the rest of the team wasn't. One of the things that I tried that kind of worked out was having a continuous video call just going between myself and the team that's concentrated, which kind of works pretty well, but my colleagues started complaining after a certain point, saying, I don't want to see you eating all the time. And it does get a little weird just to have video going. So But it was kind of nice and kind of solved that problem halfway. I feel like the perfect solution is something that, you know, like, because I would be working and I can just look here and be like into the camera and be like, hey, so what do you think about that? And it helped a lot. But running it all day was just cumbersome because, you know, you kind of forget that, wait, I'm at home, I can do whatever I want, but no, someone's watching me. So I don't know the perfect solution there, but that was one of the ways that I dealt with it. Okay, we're running 4. Oh, questions online too. Yes, sir.
So you were talking about moving decisions to an asynchronous means of communication like email. And I was wondering if you might be able to talk a little bit about how you know when a decision can be closed and how you know that folks have been included and how they may have been aware of like side conversations or like real-time conversations that you may have had with people that may have had concerns or whatever.
One thing that I'm a huge fan of is you can't stop people from talking. So sometimes when conversations happen offline or happen in chat, it's always nice to see someone summarize it and say, hey, this was said, doesn't make any decisions, but let's keep this in context. And then that's put into an email to a wider body. Of course, email is not the best way to discuss things. It's, while it includes more people, you do lose some of the niceties of a real-time communication thing. So I don't think email is the answer, but it's probably a hybrid between email and then saying something like, all right, we're gonna have like a real-time chat at such and such time, and then have another version of that, at another time, and kind of bring those two together. I do see a sign that says last question. Yeah. So there are 2 questions online, but I'll listen to yours as well. Yeah.
I just wanted to talk about personality types, if I could. Like, some people seem perhaps more suited to it. Like, you seem like a gregarious guy, okay, being on a webcam. Like, I've got a guy in Melbourne who's, and I'm based in Christchurch. He's on webcam all day, every day. He's a bit of a narcissist, so it's fine. He loves it. But some folks seem a little less suited for it. Is it like, hey, just force the point, or and like specifically if they're on the other side of the planet, then communication's hard for some people at the best of times. Then you make them remote. It feels like you're amplifying the problem.
Yeah, it is a problem, but it's not any more pronounced than dealing with it in real life, right? Because personalities are different. It does make it a little harder when you don't see the person, you don't see the body language, and so on and so forth. But trying to equalize it is the challenge, which I think you're getting at. And while you see that in day-to-day life as well, and we kind of learn to work around the personality types, it's kind of the same approach has to be taken, when you're distributed as well. In those cases, what I would do, and in the past what I've done, is like set up more frequent one-on-ones just to like chat with a person. Or, if you start having a disagreement on chat, kind of be like, hey, let's hop on a call and just, kind of talk just generally for 10 minutes and then get to the point. And that really helps in like equalizing personalities, and that way you kind of see what the other person's coming from. I'm sure some of my colleagues, which, these people here can attest to, sometimes they have to calm me down and be like, why are you so jumpy? And why are you so excited about this? This is not fun. But yeah, that's kind of the strategy I use there. I'm going to get to these 2 questions real quick, and hopefully you don't mind. Informal FaceTime matters. Context is missing in text-only in communication. How to build personal relationship with coworkers, and I think I just touched on that. Hopping on video calls, having group gatherings when feasible, or just slacking someone directly. If I know one of my colleagues really likes cars and I see something interesting, I'll Slack it to them, like, hey, check this out. Or talk about it during our next one-on-one on video, or or text them, or use other mediums. Exactly, or go to conferences. When there are many other colleagues at one location and a handful distributed, how do you get centralized ones to remember the remote ones? Keep harassing them on chat. Say things like, I am remote, remember me, I am here. Like I said, setting up that video call that ran all day was one of the solutions that I thought about. It worked really well, but there were downsides to it. or just kindly reminding them in chat rooms saying, hey, I see that you all discussed something. Do you mind if we have a follow-up discussion? You don't have to be mean about it. Just be kind, and humans generally want to listen to feedback, and they will change eventually. So that is it. Thank you all for coming.